Hello, and a very warm welcome to today's Explainer. I am absolutely thrilled to have you here. Today, we're unpacking one of the most pressing yet entirely solvable challenges of our generation, and that is the global waste crisis. Now, we're going to look right past the usual doom and gloom. Instead, we are focusing on the massive policy shifts, the ingenious technologies, and the structural transformations that are genuinely paving the way toward a true circular economy. We have a lot of fascinating ground to cover, so let's get right to it. $361 billion. Now, you might assume this is some kind of projection for the future, right? Actually, scratch that. It's not. According to a joint report by the UN Environment Program and the International Solid Waste Association, this was the true global cost of waste management back in 2020. While the direct, on-the-ground operational costs were around $252 billion, when you factor in the hidden, overarching costs like pollution, poor health outcomes, and climate change driven by bad waste disposal, the true financial burden skyrockets to $361 billion. We are quite literally paying an enormous price for our trash. Here is our roadmap for today. 1. The global waste crisis. 2. Debunking plastic recycling myths. 3. Germany's producer responsibility model. 4. South Korea's high-tech sorting. 5. The 2026 EU export ban. And 6. Building a circular economy. Okay, let's dive right into this. Section 1. The global waste crisis. To truly appreciate the incredible solutions being developed around the world, we first need to get a grip on the staggering scale of our current trajectory. We're living in an era defined by linear consumption. You know the drill. We take, we make, and we dispose. And this model is pushing our global infrastructure to the absolute brink. If we just stick to business as usual, the UN projects that global municipal solid waste will reach 3.8 billion tons annually by the year 2050. That is a massive, massive jump from the 2.3 billion tons we generated in 2023. This explosive growth is being driven by rapid urbanization, a growing global population, and those linear production habits I just mentioned. If we don't fundamentally change our global habits, the financial cost of managing all this waste, along with the environmental destruction it causes, could nearly double to over $640 billion a year. So this isn't just an environmental emergency anymore, it's a full-blown macroeconomic dilemma. Section 2. Debunking plastic recycling myths. Now, when we start talking about solutions, the conversation inevitably turns to recycling. And let's be honest, there is a lot of consumer cynicism out there. Many of us wonder if modern recycling efforts actually make any difference at all, or if it's kind of just greenwashing. Let's address the elephant in the room. It's a question we've all asked ourselves, right? You're standing there meticulously rinsing out a plastic container or desperately trying to scrape out that very last stubborn bit of peanut butter, and you wonder, does the yellow bin really work, or does this all just get burned in the end anyway? It is incredibly validating to feel skeptical, especially when you hear stories of overflowing landfills. But the facts, particularly when we look at advanced systems, tell a vastly different and honestly, a highly encouraging story. The sheer leap in progress here is just fascinating. Let's look at Germany. Their mechanical recycling rate for plastic packaging didn't just inch up. It surged from 42% in 2018 to a massive 70% in 2022. This completely debunks the myth that everything just goes straight to an incinerator. The German Environment Agency has proven that modern, highly capable sorting facilities can systematically separate materials by type. Sure, non-recyclable items and missorted trash, like if you toss an old pair of sneakers in the wrong bin, do go to energy recovery, but the actual plastic packaging designed for recycling, it is absolutely being successfully recovered and reused. Section 3. Germany's producer responsibility model. So, how did Germany achieve such a remarkable recycling rate? Well, the secret is that their success isn't just about what happens at the sorting facility. It begins long before the waste ever even reaches your household bin. The foundation of this whole system is a concept called extended producer responsibility, or EPR. Introduced in Germany way back via the 1991 Packaging Act, EPR fundamentally shifts the burden of waste management. It dictates that the companies manufacturing and selling packaged goods are both financially and physically accountable for the entire life cycle of that packaging. Basically, they have to pay licensing fees to fund the collection, sorting, and recycling of the materials they put out into the world. It completely forces manufacturers to think about the end of a product's life at the very beginning of its design phase. And this brilliantly illustrates how economic incentives change behavior across the board. Germany's system features a highly effective deposit return system. Consumers pay a deposit of 8 to 25 cents on single-use bottles, which they get right back when they return the empty container to the supermarket.
It's a simple financial incentive, but it keeps valuable PET plastics out of landfills and ensures bottles can be reused up to 20 times. On top of that, they utilize strict color-separated glass collection, keeping clear, green, and brown glass totally separate from the consumer all the way to the glassworks. And crucially, through something called eco-modulation, producers actually pay lower fees if their packaging is highly recyclable. So there is a direct, tangible financial reward for sustainable design.
Section 4. South Korea's high-tech sorting. While Germany really perfected the producer's role in the waste cycle, South Korea looked closely at the consumer. They integrated some truly cutting-edge technology to achieve their own incredible recycling milestones. Let's travel over to East Asia to see how this works in action. South Korea's approach is deeply rooted in consumer accountability through what's called a pay-as-you-throw system. First off, residents have to sort their waste into strict categories. You definitely can't just toss everything into a single black garbage bag. Second, for general, non-recyclable waste, citizens have to purchase specific color-coded bags authorized by their local district. The concept is simple. If you produce more trash, you have to buy more bags. It hits your wallet directly. Finally, and I think this is perhaps the most impressive part, food waste is disposed of in smart bins equipped with RFID technology. These bins literally weigh the food waste and charge the household accordingly. This kind of direct financial accountability dramatically reduces household waste right at the source. But they definitely don't stop at the collection phase. South Korea is deploying some incredibly advanced infrastructure to handle all this sorted material. They utilize artificial intelligence to meticulously sort and process high-quality PET plastics, which vastly improves the purity of the recycled material. And remember that food waste you just weighed in the smart bin? Well, it doesn't just sit rotting in a landfill emitting methane. It's actually processed into biomass energy and organic fertilizers. They are literally transforming their leftovers into energy. It is just a stunning showcase of how high-tech infrastructure can completely close the loop. Section 5. The 2026 EU export ban. These national successes in Germany and South Korea really show us what is possible. But now we're approaching a monumental global pivot. The whole era of treating waste as a cheap export commodity is ending. What has been a best practice in a few progressive nations is about to become a strict, heavily enforced legal necessity across all of Europe. Historically, Europe has exported roughly 35 million tons of waste every single year. In 2023 alone, nearly half of the EU's plastic waste exports, 49% to be exact, headed to non-OECD developing nations. This practice is often termed waste colonialism. It meant that massive volumes of European plastic were shipped off to countries that often had very limited waste management infrastructure. And unfortunately, this frequently led to informal dumping, open burning, and really severe health and environmental impacts in those local communities. But thankfully, this practice is coming to a decisive and frankly long overdue end. Let's run through this highly urgent regulatory timeline, because under the updated European waste shipment regulation, the clock is absolutely ticking. In May 2026, the EU will launch a centralized digital tracking system. Then the hammer drops. In November 2026, a full, complete ban on plastic waste exports to non-OECD countries takes effect. And by May 2027, broader export rules to all third countries will tighten even further, complete with mandatory independent facility audits. Europe is finally forcing itself to internalize the true costs of its own consumption. And the enforcement backbone of this entire regulation is something called DYS, the Digital Waste Shipment System. Launching in May 2026, this centralized platform replaces decades of outdated, easily manipulated paper tracking. It enables real-time document exchange and data analytics to instantly flag irregularities and combat illegal waste trafficking. By guaranteeing total transparency, DWAS ensures that millions of tons of plastic waste will securely remain within Europe for domestic processing and high-quality recycling. No more out of sight, out of mind. Section 6. Building a circular economy. Now, this strict regulatory environment might seem a little daunting to some industries in the short term, but it is actually the exact catalyst we need. This regulatory hammer creates a massive, unprecedented economic opportunity for us to abandon our linear habits and build a true circular economy. The crucial point here is the financial reality of this transition. Just look at the math between these two futures. If we stick to business as usual, by 2050, the global cost of waste management and its associated environmental damages will equal a staggering $640.3 billion loss annually. However, if we fully commit to a zero-waste circular economy, where we prioritize waste prevention, eco-design, and material recovery, we don't just mitigate those costs, we actually create a net global gain of $108.5 billion a year. Sustainable practices are, quite literally, the most economically sound path forward. And the positive global ripple effects of this pivot are just incredible. Because waste will no longer be exported, companies are going to be forced to invest heavily in advanced domestic mechanical and chemical recycling infrastructure. This circular economy expansion is projected to generate hundreds of thousands of new green jobs in collection, remanufacturing, and research and development. Furthermore, by harvesting high-quality secondary raw materials from our own waste, we drastically reduce our dependency on fossil fuel-based virgin plastics. So it protects vulnerable nations from toxic exposure while simultaneously boosting domestic innovation and resource security. It's a win-win. We are standing at the threshold of a totally transformed global system. The policies are set, the technologies are scaling fast, and the economic incentives are finally aligning with our environmental necessities. But here's the thing, a circular economy requires participation at every single level, from the manufacturer designing the packaging in a boardroom to you and me standing over the recycling bin at home. So I want to leave you with this thought. As the era of waste colonialism finally ends and the true value of our resources is recognized, how will you adapt your own daily habits to thrive in this new zero-waste circular economy? Thank you so much for joining me for this explainer. Keep learning, keep questioning, and I will see you next time.